Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. Today I'm going to be doing a review of a recently released album, Beast in Black's Dark Connection. Now I discovered Beast in Black about 2 years ago. I had heard Battle Beast before. I thought they were okay. Honestly, I hadn't really checked them out too deeply, but then I read a review of the last Beast in Black album, and I was like kind of sold because they had a lot of AOR references and classic metal, and I was like, oh my god, that sounds really weird. So I listened to one of the songs. I was like, oh, I'm gonna probably give that a chance. And at first it was kind of like, well, I thought it was going to be really super cheesy and super ridiculous, and that's kind of why I bought it. I was like, because I used to see this girl that lived about 70 miles away, so I would go out, I still have a CD player in there, so I'd bring a CD for a ride. I don't like streaming. I try to avoid MP3s when I can, even though I have terabytes of music and stuff, so it's not like I don't do any kind of stuff like that. I usually stream for podcasts mainly. That's what I use Spotify for the majority of the time, so I'm not really into the streaming thing, but buying CDs still, speaks for itself. I don't know. I buy records too, even though my record player is kind of shitty. So I bought this album, and I'm just like, I put it on. I'm like, it's totally over the top and ridiculous. Not this one, not the current one, but the From Hell with Love, previous one. And okay, I'm listening to it. I'm like, okay, this sounds kind of 80s, kind of almost like dance pop from the 80s in a way, and I'm just like, I have to respect this band because they're so over the top and so good at what they do, And by the time I was to my, ex-girlfriend's house, I was like, damn, I actually like this band a lot. And it was a weird moment. I was just like, okay. I started out like just thinking it was so over top ridiculous. I was like, it was a guilty pleasure, and then I'm just like, Jesus, there's this is as infectious as a airborne STI. So that doesn't make any sense, but whatever, I don't care. So the new album came out, and of course intrigued my interest because I can't tell you how many times I listened to their last album. It was, especially in 2019 and early 2020, I kind of admittedly took a break from them because it did remind me of said ex-girlfriend. But I started listening to it in like maybe late last year again. I started listening to them a bit, and it hadn't really lost its allure. I was just like, damn, this band just, one of my favorite new bands. I bought the shirt, you can probably see it in a couple of videos I've done. Something about this band, just they do it right. So I'll just say this right now, a lot of modern power metal just leaves me dry. It's like, I'm not a woman, so maybe that doesn't make sense. Leave me dry. But anyways, a little sophomoric humor aside, I was so impressed that I started going back and listening to Battle Beast and stuff, and I liked Battle Beast. Don't get me wrong. I just wasn't like, I had never really delved deeply into them. So this type of metal usually isn't my thing. Like, I'm not really a big fan of Sabotage. Powerwolf's okay, I'm just trying to check them out more. I just mean like this kind of standardized modern power metal, but they do it so well, and they do it differently. They throw all these weird kind of influences in there, kind of just really blatantly commercial 80s commercial sound to it, and this is no exception. So this album starts with the song Blade Runner, which at first was like, I wasn't as impressed as like Cry Out for a Hero off the last album. That the opener song, I wasn't as impressed, but I listened to it twice, I go for these rides and stuff, I go for these drives, and I listened to it the second time, like, yeah, this kicks ass, So it's a pretty driving song, so to speak. Belladonna is pretty good too. You know, it has a lot of influences, you know, like the last album. And it kind of has a little bit more of a, I would say it's a little more metalish like the first album rather than the second album. It has a little bit, there's a little bit chunkier guitars at times, at least for the first half. So Highway to Mars, very catchy song. Hardcore I do not like as much. I think it's probably the weakest song in the album. It's the most commercial, I wouldn't say a modern commercial sense, but it kind of gets close to that. The chorus is kind of annoying. I'm not as big of a fan as that song. So I still listen to it, but One Night in Tokyo was, I believe, the first single from the album. It's a really cool video. Kind of introduces like a synthwave influence into the band. And there was maybe a tiny bit of that in the last album. Same with Midnight Rendezvous and some of these songs. So those are really cool, a really cool duo of tracks that have very commercial sensibilities from, you know, if you want to call it commercial, but, you know, catchy, I would call it, not commercial. It doesn't sound like, I don't know, Drake or some shit nowadays. It sounds like, could be some kind of 80s band, but like also like even with a little bit of a synth pop or synthwave, you know, modern synthwave influence, of course. Revengeance Machine is surprisingly aggressive Judas Priest kind of song. It kind of goes, you know, into a little bit more speedy territory that a lot of their like last album did not. So kind of a return to the old power metal influences, but really catchy as well. Dark New World is a good song. To the Last Drop of Blood, great song. Broken Survivors, probably the catchiest song off the album. Just absolute masterpiece of music. It's just like, it seems so familiar, the chorus and stuff. You're just like, did I hear this before? It's like, you didn't, you know, it's like, it's so awesome. Midastopia, kind of, I think that was the one that had the kind of the ballady kind of stuff interspersed, but that was the one song off the last album that I did not like, was the ballad, because it was just so stock. But this is a better power ballad. So it concludes with 2 bonus tracks. We have 2 bonus tracks on here. Manowar's Battle Hymns, which it veers too close to the original for me. The singer is awesome. You know, he could definitely handle Eric Adams, but it's not what I call a great Manowar cover. Manowar, a notoriously bad, or not, I shouldn't say bad, notoriously difficult band to cover. The only person that really covered them was Korthon, because he was, after all, he's very influenced by Manowar and his Viking stuff from Blood, Fire, Death on. You know, I even think Enter the Eternal Fire has that beat of that early Manowar stuff a little bit too. So the only guy that can get away with Manowar, that much Manowar worship, is probably Korthon. I mean, influenced a generation of people, both bands, you know, but not that blatantly. You know, they blatantly ripped them off on some of the songs. I'll just be honest, like some of the patterns and stuff. But I love the way Korthon, intermixes the Manowar sound into, you know, the more extreme sounds. I'm not saying blatantly, a little bit blatantly, not totally blatantly. Same with Venom. He was very influenced by Venom. I don't give a shit what he said in interviews. He was very influenced by Venom. But anyways, that's a whole other subject for another day. So Battle Hymn's kind of cool, though. Instead of like the piccolo bass and like the guitars, the keyboards do the intro. It's kind of cool. And that's the one good thing about it. But otherwise, it just sounds too close. But those rhythms are very hard to, like, if you're not going to use that type of beat in the song like Manowar did, it's not going to come close to sounding the same way. So, and then there's a final song, Michael Jackson's song, They Don't Care About Us, which is cool, which is pretty cool. I like that one too. I wouldn't say that they are worth the cost of the album, these bonus tracks, but they are cool nevertheless. I actually do like the cover on the bonus version of the Japanese version, or one of the versions of the last album, was a song from the Rocky soundtrack. What was it? Shit. Yeah, I mean, there was better songs they could cover. I think they could cover like some more AOR kind of those soundtrack, those workout montage 80s songs way better than Manowar or Michael Jackson, but nevertheless, they're cool. So overall, I'd give this album 4.5 out of 5. I do not like it as much as the last album. That said, it's been growing on me. Listening to it more and more, it's one of those bands that just seeps into you. You know, you're like, at first, you do like it a lot, of course. Like upon first listen, like when I first heard Blind Guardian, I was immediately in love. So at first, I'm like, yeah, this kicks ass. But then it just gets even more when you listen to it a second or third time. It's like, what the hell? This band just is a master of hooks and songwriting. The guitarist, the main songwriter, is just a genius as far as composition, just from the standpoint of a guy that is just, you know, he's writing. It's all standard stuff. It's not very progressive. It's not not prog metal or some kind of cutting edge, edgy kind of avant-garde metal. Like, oh my God, he's so groundbreaking for using these 12-tone scale and in 17/15 timing or something like that. No, it's not like that. But it takes these, you know, conventional ideas and just meshes them in this way that's so over the top and so catchy that it's irresistible. And that's the secret formula of the band. You know, I try to listen to these newer bands, like, you know, Sabaton kind of stuff or whatever. It's just like, it just sounds, to me, it just sounds kind of that kind of stuff kind of sounds stock, you know. I mean, the last power metal band I was really this excited about was probably Hybria from Brazil, but I never got this excited about them. I never bought the shirt, you know, I never bought all their albums on CD and shit. I'm just like, this band is just so good. And their singer and the guitar playing, the drums, you know, and bass, the rhythm section is kind of conventional, but you know, some of the solos really stand out too. The guy is an absolute genius of composition, and the keyboards and stuff. It has this element this factor that I never, you know, I haven't heard in a long time as far as that, just doing things that well, writing songs that infectious. You know, it's an art that is, you know, we've gone through a lot of things in metal over the past 20 years, you know, metalcore, you know, well, new metal, NU metal, I mean, metalcore, gent, you know, it seemed like it got really gimmicky in this certain way, whereas this is gimmicky in a different way, but like the gimmick is the catchy, the over the top ridiculousness of the hooks. Like, you cannot get a song out of your head for months if you listen. Even this album, a little bit less than the last album, a little bit less catchy, a little more chunky, you know, with the guitars, a little more. I mean, even Revengeance Machine, which is a standout too. It's very Priest-like, you know, it kind of has that classic speed metal thing. It still has those hooks that are just over the top, more so than the first album. Maybe not as much as the second album, but the first album was way more conventional, but had a lot of good songs too. You know, I say the best band of the last 5 years, and easily the album of the year for me, because I don't know about the new Hypocrisy that'll come out too, but the band just knows how to, they just do it so well. They do something very conventional that I normally wouldn't like, right? I would be like, it just sounds like some of the stuff. I'm just saying, you know, they do something so, it's conventional, a lot of times conventional power metal, Euro metal, you know, play at Wacken, you know, and all that's Wacken, you know, all that stuff. And, oh, they're going to get the whole people to sing the song, you know, the whole crowd, all these, you know, metalheads, and, you know, it's like a lot of people can make fun of that, like, you know, black metal, necro black metal diehards or something. It's so stupid, Wacken, stupid Century Media, Nuclear Blast, power metal bands. You know, they could say all that shit, but this band like takes that sound and brings it to the 10th degree level that it's insane, like how well they do it. And you know, some people call them disco metal. I mean, some of the stuff is danceable. It has some kind of sort of beats that you know, it's some weird like obscure European club, some dance club, you probably hear some of these songs. I wouldn't be surprised, but they just do it so damn well. It's just so good. And the songwriting, it's a skill that it doesn't take gimmicks or pushing conventions to their limit necessarily to be a good songwriter. This guy, is, I mean, the main man in Beast in Black is he's just such a, I mean, he gets it down, it pushes it to the limit of infectiousness and accessibility. I mean, it's accessibility. It's like, oh yeah, it's so commercial sounding. I mean, if it were 1986, of course, not 2006 or 2016 or 2026, 1986 kind of hooks and stuff, it's like, and that's something you don't feel guilty about listening to, I mean, there's a couple of times it could be more, a couple of songs that could have a more modern thing to it, The thing is actually, even though it has all these 80s influences, it's timeless because it's so accessible and so memorable that you could listen to this you could probably listen to this album in 2046, 3026, 3026, 3021, whatever, and still have hooks on it. So I'm blabbing too much, but that I highly recommend this album. I highly recommend giving it like a listen, and then more than one listen, because it's just so catchy and stuff. And I recommend this band. I think they're the best band in metal nowadays. There's other bands too, there's other bands that are more extreme or whatever, but it's just so good. Anyways, that's all.